Hi, my name is Emma. I'm 68 years old, and I've lived in the same cedar-shingled house on Maple Ridge Lane for over 3 decades. You wouldn't find our town, Maple Ridge, Vermont, on many postcards. No ski resorts, no gourmet coffee chains, but we've got something better: neighbors who wave when they pass, the post office clerk who knows your dog's name, and quiet streets that smell like pine in the fall. I've worked at Bennett's Fabrics for over 20 years. It's not glamorous, but there's comfort in the rhythm of cutting cloth, arranging spools, and listening to the stories people tell when they think no one's paying much attention. After a while, you stop just being the manager. You become the unofficial town therapist. I don't have a degree on the wall, but I've got wrinkles that prove I've heard it all. I lost my husband, Charles, 4 winters ago. Heart attack. Out in the garage, changing the oil like he always did. We were married for 45 years. Since then, this house feels too quiet. I still catch myself setting 2 plates at dinner or reaching for his flannel shirts when the mornings get cold. We raised 2 daughters in this home. Sarah, the dependable one, runs her own hair salon in Burlington with military precision. And Lacey, well, Lacey's always been a dreamer. Divorced, juggling jobs, raising little Ethan on her own. She tries, bless her heart. But life's been a tangle for her since college. These walls have seen tea parties with teddy bears, teenage meltdowns, prom night pictures on the porch. This house isn't just a place I live. It's the story of who we are. I thought I had a quiet life carved out. Simple, predictably. But I've come to learn something hard at this age. Just because you've planted roots doesn't mean the ground can't shift beneath you. And sometimes, it's your own blood who starts digging. I have 2 daughters. Sarah came first, my steady one. From the moment she could walk, she marched to her own beat. Clipboard in hand, checklist in mind. She runs her own salon now in Burlington, just under an hour away. Married to Eric, a high school chemistry teacher with a fondness for bad puns and flannel shirts. They've got 2 teenagers: Maggie, who lives with earbuds in, and Nate, who thinks he's going pro in lacrosse any day now. Sarah is the kind of daughter who files your taxes before you ask, who brings extra batteries to Thanksgiving, in case the smoke alarm decides to be dramatic. She's reliable, organized, and precise. She also calls me every Tuesday and Thursday at 7:30 sharp, never 7:29. Never 7:31. Then there's Lacey. Lacey is different, always was. Where Sarah colored inside the lines, Lacey sketched flowers in the margins. She was the little girl who dressed up as a pirate princess to church and turned bath time into a Broadway musical. And for a long time, I adored that about her. Her wild heart, her spontaneity. But as the years went on, that free spirit turned into something else. Lacey bounced between jobs, changed majors 3 times, never quite found a footing. She married a software developer named Sean, nice enough man, but more comfortable with screens than people. They split when their son Ethan was just 6. Now Ethan's 10. A quiet, observant boy who builds paper airplanes with mathematical precision. He has Lacey's sandy blonde hair and Charles's thoughtful eyes. They live in a cramped studio above a laundromat on Maple Street, right across from the tire shop. Lacey says it's temporary, but it's been nearly 2 years. And the hum of dryers and the smell of detergent has become Ethan's background noise. Lacey works at an appliance store off the interstate. She's held that job longer than any before, almost 2 full years now. But even with steady work, ends don't meet. She's always scrambling. Late fees, rent issues, school supplies, galopere. And I've helped. Again and again. Paid the electricity bill in February. Covered Ethan's dental visit in June. And last Christmas, I handed her an envelope with $500 cash instead of presents. Sara says I enable her. Maybe I do. But when your child calls you in tears, what kind of mother turns away? Even now, I watch Lacey struggle with this quiet desperation like she's running a race no one trained her for. And Ethan, he just clings tighter to me every time he visits. Maybe he senses it. Even if no one says it out loud, a boy shouldn't have to learn instability this young. And a mother shouldn't have to choose between helping her child and preserving what little she has left. It was a Tuesday when she showed up. Not one of the usual days. Not a weekend. Not a holiday. Just a regular Tuesday. With the sky draped in the kind of overcast gray that makes everything feel heavier. I opened the door to find Lacey standing on my porch. Alone. Without Ethan. That in itself was unusual. She always brought him when she came, partly because he loved being here. And partly because, well, she needed the help. Her coat was zipped all the way to her chin. But I could see the flush in her cheeks. Her eyes were tired. Not tired like after a long shift. Tired like someone carrying something heavy they couldn't put down. Hey! Mom! She said. Her voice softer than usual. You got a minute, of course I did. I always do. We sat at the kitchen table. A pot of chamomile tea between us. 2 mismatched mugs from my old collection. She talked about the weather. About how Ethan's math teacher had changed. About a customer who tried to return a blender she clearly dropped. She danced around the thing she came to say for a good 15 minutes. And then she finally breathed in, stared into her mug, and said, I need help. My stomach tightened. I knew the tone. I'd heard it before. The weight behind the words. There was a leak in the ceiling over the weekend. She said, her fingers tightening around the ceramic. Above the laundry room. The landlord says he'll fix it, but not for another week, and honestly, I don't think it's safe for Ethan to sleep there. There's mold. And the carpet's soaked through. She looked up at me with those big eyes that used to beg for cookies before dinner. But she wasn't a child anymore. This was something else. That blend of shame and hope that only a desperate adult can wear. I found another place. She continued. Just a few blocks from Ethan's school. It's small, but it has 2 bedrooms. A little balcony. I think it could be good for us. How much I asked. Though I already knew I'd say yes. They want first and last month's rent. Plus a security deposit. It comes out to $3,000. I've got $800. Maybe a little more if my next check comes through early. I didn't respond right away. It wasn't the first time. It wouldn't be the last. Just 3 months earlier. I'd paid for her brake pads and rotors. Before that, it was overdue water bills. Before that, it was Ethan's school clothes. I'd never kept track. I didn't want to. She's my daughter. That's supposed to be enough. But my pension and part-time wages at Bennett's weren't limitless. Every time I gave, I told myself it was the last time. And yet, there I was. Already reaching mentally for my checkbook. Have you asked Sean? I said carefully, referring to Ethan's father. She shook her head quickly. He said he's between freelance contracts. Again. Maybe next month. But that doesn't help us right now. We've been crashing at my coworker's place for 3 days. Ethan's been sleeping on a love seat. He's exhausted. His grades are dropping. I looked at my daughter, really looked. I saw the same panic I'd seen years ago when she lost her first tooth and thought something was wrong. The same fear she had at 17 when she backed Charles's old truck into the mailbox. Somehow, she always looked just on the edge of breaking. "Is this new place better?" I asked. Though I already knew what I'd do. Her eyes lit up a little. "It's cleaner, brighter, and Ethan would finally have his own room." I nodded slowly, the decision settling into my bones. "All right," I said. "I'll help with the deposit. But Lacey, something has to change." She reached across the table and squeezed my hand, tears brimming. "It will. I promise. Mom, I'll make it right this time." I wanted to believe her. God, help me. I really did. The night after I wrote that check, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake in the same bed I'd shared with Charles for over 40 years, staring at the ceiling, counting the knots in the wooden panels like I used to count sheep when the girls were little. Every time I closed my eyes, I pictured Lacey and Ethan curled up on that coworker's love seat, surrounded by bags and boxes. I imagined the mold creeping up the corners of their old apartment, the noise from the laundromat downstairs, the way Ethan had started biting his nails again, and beneath all of that, I kept hearing Charles's voice. "Emma, we can't always catch her." But he wasn't here anymore, and I was tired of watching my daughter run in circles, always one step behind stability. So the next morning, I made a call. Roger Pratt, our old family friend and the town's most trusted real estate attorney, answered on the second ring. His voice still had that calm, rumbling drawl, the kind of voice that makes you feel like everything can be sorted out with a few good signatures. "Emma Caldwell," he said warmly. "It's been too long. What can I do for you?" I hesitated for a moment before answering. "Roger, I want to transfer the house." There was a pause on the line. "To Sarah?" he asked. "No," I said quietly. "To Lacey." Another pause. This one longer. "Are you sure I want to keep the right to live here?" "Of course," I added quickly. "For the rest of my life. Just like what we did for Edna's aunt a few years back. Remember, right? A life estate clause," he muttered, already scribbling notes. "Emma, can I ask why?" Now I looked out the window at the apple tree Charles had planted with Ethan in the yard. It was bare now, its limbs stretched like tired arms. Because she needs something that doesn't disappear. And so does Ethan. Roger didn't argue. He never did. "Okay, let's set a time. I'll have everything drafted by Thursday." By Friday evening, everything was ready. The papers were signed, notarized, and properly filed. As of that moment, the deed was legally in Lacey's name, with a life estate clause giving me the right to live there until my last breath. I hadn't told Sarah. I couldn't. Not yet. She'd never understand. Not when she'd spent her whole life building responsibly while Lacey stumbled. I wanted to tell Lacey in person, not just hand her the papers, but explain what this house had meant to all of us. I imagined her reaction, the tears, the gratitude, the plans she'd start making. I hoped maybe, just maybe, this act would anchor her. So I baked a pie Charles's favorite peach, set the table, made Ethan's favorite casserole. It was one of those crisp autumn evenings where the air smells like chimney smoke and everything feels a little softer. The kind of night that makes you believe good things are possible. But Lacey didn't show up at 6 or 7, at 8:30. I had reheated dinner twice and eaten half the pie alone. Ethan finally arrived around 9, dragging his backpack behind him like it weighed 100 pounds. His face was tired, his voice quieter than usual. Mom said she had a work thing. he mumbled before disappearing into the den to finish his model airplane. When Lacey finally walked in at nearly 10, she looked flushed, excited. Even hair pulled into a messy ponytail. Eyes bright with energy. "Sorry I'm late," she said, brushing a kiss on my cheek. "Things have been moving fast." I ushered her into the living room, where the envelope with the deed sat waiting on the coffee table. But before I could say a word, she launched into her own story. "Mom, good news. The apartment didn't work out. Wiring issues. But I found an even better one, 2 bedrooms. Brand new appliances. Closer to Ethan's school. And get this, it's actually cheaper. So, I still have some of the check left. Isn't that great?" I blinked. "You didn't move into the one I helped you pay for." "Well, not exactly. I mean, I never signed the lease. Just left a holding deposit. But this new place is such a better fit." And just like that, the warmth drained from the room. I opened my mouth to speak, then closed it again. Because deep down, I knew for all the planning I had done, all the good intentions I had wrapped in legal documents and notarized seals, I was still standing at the edge of the same familiar cliff. Only this time, I'd handed her the parachute. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was angry, though, and not because I felt betrayed, though that emotion bubbled just under the surface. No! I didn't sleep because I knew something had shifted. Something subtle but irreversible. When you give your child your house, the very roof that held their first cries, their scraped knees, their birthday parties and teenage storms, you're not just giving them real estate. You're giving them history, memory, legacy. And I had hoped, God, I had hoped she would hold that with care. 2 days later, I came home from work early. I'd traded shifts with Margie at the fabric shop because of a dentist appointment that ended faster than expected. The house was quiet. Ethan was with a friend. I planned to make tea, pull out the sewing machine, and finally hem the kitchen curtains I'd been putting off for months. But when I pulled into the driveway, I noticed the car. It wasn't Lacey's, and it wasn't anyone I knew. I stepped inside and heard voices low. Unfamiliar. Businesslike. I walked toward the living room and stopped cold. Lacey was standing beside a man in a blazer, holding a sleek tablet and pointing toward the kitchen. They didn't notice me at first. She was animated. He was taking notes? When she finally saw me, she froze for just a second. Then she smiled like nothing was wrong. "Oh, Mom, you're home early." I didn't answer. Just looked at the man. "This is Brent Kessler," she said quickly. "He's a real estate agent. We're just, getting a sense of what the house might be worth." "What it might be worth," I echoed. Brent extended a hand. "Mrs. Caldwell. Pleasure to meet you. You've got a lovely home. Solid bones. Great neighborhood. Honestly, properties like this are flying off the market these days." I didn't shake his hand. Instead, I turned to Lacey. "Can I speak to you? Alone?" She nodded and followed me into the kitchen. Once the door was shut, I said it plainly. "You're selling the house." She didn't deny it. "I'm considering it." "No. You're preparing it. You brought in an agent. You're serious." She sighed, exasperated. "Mom, be reasonable. This house is too big. Too expensive. The taxes alone, I told you I was staying here." I said, my voice cracking for the first time. "That was the agreement. The reason I signed it over. You have a life estate," she said, reciting it like a contract clause, "which means you're entitled to housing. But that doesn't mean it has to be here. Excuse me. There are lovely apartments in the town center. Single story. No stairs. Modern heating. You'd be more comfortable. And with what I make from this house, I could pay your rent for years and still have enough to finally put something away for Ethan. I felt my breath leave my chest. You've already planned my eviction. Haven't you? It's not an eviction. Mom, it's a transition. No. Lacey, it's betrayal. She blinked, her expression hardening. You're being dramatic. No. I'm being honest. You looked me in the eyes. Hugged me. Cried even, and now you're selling the only home I've ever known. The home your father built with his hands. And you're calling it, what, practical? She crossed her arms. I'm trying to build a future for my son. Something stable. Something real. This house is the only asset we have. We, I said. Or you. She didn't answer. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The silence between us wasn't empty, it was full. Full of all the years I picked her up when she fell. Full of every time I put her needs above my own. Full of the weight of being her mother. Long after she stopped being a child. You'll have to call the police. I said finally. What if you want me out? You'll need a sheriff at the door. Because I'm not going willingly. Her mouth opened, then closed. I walked past her. Back into the living room. Brent looked up from his tablet. Sensing the temperature had dropped, she's not selling, I said flatly, and then I turned. Walked into the kitchen. And sat at the table Charles had built in 1989 with salvaged oak. I didn't cry. Not yet. But I felt the crack form, the deep one. The kind you know will break something. Even if it hasn't yet. The next morning, there was a white van parked in front of the house. At first, I thought it was a delivery. Maybe something for Ethan. But as I stepped outside in my slippers, coffee still warm in my hand, I saw the logo on the side, Hearth and Home Interiors. Renovations. Redesigns. Ready to sell. My stomach dropped. I hurried inside, heart pounding, and climbed the stairs 2 at a time. The hallway was filled with the scent of fresh paint and sawdust, and then I saw them, 2 men in overalls stripping wallpaper off the wall in Sarah's old bedroom. One of them had already pried off the crown molding and laid it neatly on a drop cloth. What is going on here? I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. The younger man looked over his shoulder. We were scheduled for interior prep. Miss Caldwell gave the green light. I'm Miss Caldwell, I said, stepping into the room. And I didn't approve anything. He paused, clearly confused. I meant the other Miss Caldwell. I stood frozen for a moment, watching a stranger's hands peel back decades of wallpaper I'd helped Sarah pick when she was 13. Yellow with tiny blue flowers. Now torn down like it meant nothing. You can stop, I said flatly. Right now. Ma'am, I'm gonna have to ask you to take that up with the homeowner. I am the homeowner, I snapped. At least the one who still lives here. The men hesitated. One of them shrugged. We'll call the office, he said, clearly uncomfortable. I turned and went downstairs, fury rising up my spine like heat in a chimney. I called Lacey. Straight to voicemail. I called again. Nothing. Finally, I texted her, call me now. What you're doing is not okay. 10 minutes later, she responded. The updates are necessary to increase the home's value. Please don't interfere with the process. Interfere. I stared at those words until they blurred. I felt like a ghost in my own home, haunting hallways that were no longer mine. clinging to rooms that were already being erased. That evening, she showed up. She didn't knock, just walked in with a man in a crisp navy suit and polished shoes that clicked against the hardwood like a gavel. "Mom," she said lightly. "This is Daniel Lang. He's the buyer." I didn't move from my chair in the living room. The lights were off. The television on mute. Just me. The silence, and the sound of my own pulse in my ears. Daniel smiled awkwardly. "Mrs. Caldwell. Pleasure to meet you. You have a lovely home." I stared at him. "I know. I've lived here for 30 years. Mom." Lacey interjected, hair tone tightening. "We're just taking a final walkthrough. Mr. Lang is finalizing the offer. You knew this was coming." "No," I said, standing. What I knew was that I was staying in this house until I died. That's what we agreed. That's what the deed says. You'll still have housing. Lacey said quickly, "I've found you a ground floor apartment in town. Safer. No stairs. It's a great place. Mom, you'll like it." Danielle shifted uncomfortably. "Maybe I should come back another time." "No." Lacey cut him off. "You're here. Let's finish." I stood in the doorway, blocking their path. "You are not showing this house while I'm standing in it. And I'm not leaving. You can take my name off the title." "Lacey, but you can't take the memories out of these walls. Not with paint. Not with drywall. And definitely not with charm." She didn't flinch. "Not this time. Then we'll wait," she said quietly. 2 weeks. The paperwork's already in motion. I looked at her. Really looked. The girl who used to fall asleep on my chest as a baby was now negotiating my displacement with the cold efficiency of a landlord. "I'm not going anywhere," I said. "And if you want me out, you'll have to take me to court." She exhaled through her nose. "That's not necessary." "No," I said, my voice firm. "But it's what you'll have to do." She left without another word, and I stayed. Alone. In the dark. Listening to the echo of doors closing on the only life I had ever known. The house felt unfamiliar now. Rooms were colder. The walls echoed in ways they never used to. I started avoiding the upstairs altogether. Every time I passed by Sarah's old room, I caught a glimpse of the stripped wallpaper and the bare plaster beneath like skin peeled back, exposing everything. But the worst part wasn't the renovations. It was the silence from Lacey. No calls. No visits. Just workers coming and going. Hammering. Painting. Adjusting. Preparing my life for resale. Then, on the 4th day, I heard at the front door opening quietly. I was in the kitchen, peeling apples for a pie I no longer had anyone to share with. "Mom," a familiar voice called. I turned and saw Frank, my 10-year-old grandson, standing in the doorway with his backpack still on. He looked up at me with wide eyes. "Can I stay here tonight?" My heart jumped. "Of course, sweetheart. But does your mom know where you are?" He nodded, then hesitated. "She's working late again. Said she'd be home after dark. I don't like being at the new place by myself." I motioned him in, helped him shrug off the backpack. He didn't say much, as he sat at the table and watched me slice the apples, his little fingers tracing the grooves in the worn wooden surface. "Grandma," he said suddenly. "Is it true? You're moving out?" I froze. Knife in midair. Why would you ask that? Mom said we're selling the house, and that you're gonna live somewhere with elevators and no stairs. I forced a smile. "Well, Elevators do sound fun. But this is your house, he said, frowning. You said Grandpa built the fence with his bare hands. And the tree swing. And the deck. How can someone else live here? I sat down beside him and tucked a strand of his messy hair behind his ear. It's complicated. Honey. Grown-up stuff. Sometimes, people make choices they think are right. But they hurt people without meaning to. He was quiet for a moment. Then he looked me in the eye and said, I want to live here. With you? The words hit harder than anything Lacey had said in weeks. I know. I whispered. He stayed the night. We watched old cartoons and made popcorn the way Charles used to stovetop. With too much butter. For a few hours. It almost felt like things could go back to how they were. Until morning came. And so did Lacey. She showed up at the door just after sunrise. Her eyes puffy. Her coat buttoned wrong. When she saw, Frank curled up on the couch with a blanket. Her expression twisted. You came here, she asked him. Arms crossed. Without asking, I called you. He said. You didn't answer. She turned to me. Her voice low but biting. You can't just let him stay here without talking to me. I didn't plan it. Lacey. He showed up. Scared and alone. What did you want me to do? Send him away? Her jaw clenched. He's confused. You're confusing him. I stood tall. He's not confused. He's 10. And he knows exactly what it feels like to lose his home. Lacey said nothing. Frank stood behind me, peeking over my shoulder. I don't want to go back, he muttered. Frank, she said, reaching for his hand. We talked about this. You said you'd try? He didn't move. And for a moment, the three of us stood there, suspended between love and hurt, between everything we had and everything we were about to lose. Lacey's hand dropped to her side. I'll be back tonight, she said quietly. We'll talk then. And she left, the door closing with a soft but final click behind her. She showed up after dark. I was in the kitchen, drying the last of the dishes, when I heard the knock. Not the rushed kind. Not the sharp, let me in tap. I had learned to associate with her presence lately just a soft, almost hesitant sound, like someone unsure they were welcome. When I opened the door, Lacey stood there, no makeup, no blazer, no mask, just a daughter. Her coat was still zipped, though the wind had died hours ago. Her hair was pulled back in a lazy knot. She held something in both hands, a peach pie, still warm in the foil tin. The smell immediately hitting me with a pang of memory. I remembered Dad liked peach, she said quietly. Thought. I shouldn't come empty-handed. I stepped aside. Come in. She didn't speak for a few moments after entering. Just stood in the kitchen, eyes tracing the walls like they were new to her. I never noticed how many little things you kept, she murmured, nodding toward the refrigerator, covered in magnets. Photos. And Ethan's spelling tests from 3 grades ago. I don't have any of this on my fridge. I pulled out 2 mugs and poured us chamomile tea. We sat in the living room, the pie untouched between us on the coffee table. She stared into her mug as if the words were steeping there. Mom, I messed up. My throat tightened. But I let her speak. I didn't just hurt you. I humiliated you. I used your love to get something I thought would fix everything, and instead, I broke the one person who never stopped showing up for me. Her voice cracked. I kept thinking that if I just had enough money, enough control, enough stability, that maybe I'd finally stop feeling like the one who always needed saving. She looked at me. And I thought if I could pull this off, sell the house, get ahead, I'd prove something. That I wasn't the screw-up. That I could carry something heavy without dropping it. A tear slipped down her cheek. But she didn't wipe it. I didn't just drop it. I shattered it. The silence between us felt different this time. It wasn't filled with resentment. It was full of recognition. I talked to a lawyer. She added after a pause. I can reverse the deed. Give it back. It might take some paperwork. But I'm willing. I shook my head gently. I don't want the house back. Lacey. She looked up, stunned. You don't know. I said, because the house doesn't matter as much as you do. What I want is for you to live up to the kind of woman I know you can be. Not just for me. Not for Ethan. But for yourself. She covered her face with both hands, sobbing quietly. It was the first time I'd seen her truly fall apart. Not in crisis. Not in anger. But in realization. I'm so sorry. Mom? She whispered. If you never forgive me. I get it. I leaned forward, reaching across the table for her hand. Forgiveness isn't something you wait for. I said softly. It's something you walk toward. Her fingers tightened around mine like a lifeline. And for the first time in a long time, I saw my daughter again, not the woman negotiating contracts or dodging accountability, but the little girl who used to climb into my lap after nightmares and whisper, I'm still scared. But I know you're here. I was still here. And maybe now. So was she. A week later, I moved back into the house, not as the owner, but as something more important, a mother with her daughter, a grandmother with her grandson. A woman rebuilding the home she never truly left. Lacey didn't reverse the deed. I didn't ask her to. Instead, we found something else, a shared life. She gave up the sale, canceled the listing, and started undoing the renovation work piece by piece. The gray walls painted back to cream. The modern staging furniture sent back to the rental company. Sarah's wallpaper still gone. But the room now had a bookshelf filled with Ethan's space encyclopedias and Lego kits. The first night back, I made dinner for all three of us. Nothing fancy, just baked chicken and mashed potatoes, but we sat at the same table where Charles once carved his initials into the corner, where Lacey had spilled juice during her 6th birthday, and where Sarah once told us she'd made Dean's List. That night, Sarah came by. At first, she stood in the doorway, arms crossed, ready to say, I told you so. But then she saw Lacey on her knees, scrubbing scuff marks off the floor, and Ethan humming to himself in the background. She didn't say it. Instead, she stepped inside, handed me a pie dish, and said, Pumpkin this time. You always liked it better than peach. We all ate together. 4 people. 1 table. No lawyers. No paperwork. Just awkward conversation and small laughter. The kind that sounds uncertain but hopeful. Later that evening, when the house had gone quiet, Lacey peeked into my room. Do you really think I can fix this? She asked. I looked at her, tired but trying. Bruised but not broken. You're already fixing it, I said. She smiled. It wasn't perfect. Nothing ever would be again. But for the first time in a long time, the house didn't feel like a battleground. It felt like home. People always say forgiveness is about letting go. But I've learned something different. Forgiveness isn't forgetting. It's choosing to remember and love anyway. It's seeing the cracks and deciding to plant something in them, not cover them up. Lacey didn't become perfect overnight. She still misplaces her keys. Still second guesses herself. Still fumbles through motherhood more than she'd like to admit. But she shows up now for Ethan. For herself. And for me. And me, I've stopped waiting for life to feel like it used to. Instead, I've started living in what is, our house isn't just a place again, it's a promise. A messy, imperfect promise between a mother and her child to try, fail, and try again. If you've ever been betrayed by someone you love, you'll understand this. Sometimes, the people who hurt us the most are also the ones most desperate to be forgiven. And sometimes, the most powerful thing you can say is simply, I'm still here.